Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff, Mosher, and Adam Caplan, a midweek Inside the Birds. And Adam, once again, the Eagles do it. They make a big move right before the trade deadline. They release tight end Albert O. Quenbucom from
Albert
he was
O.
Alberto gets released. Yeah, there was no big move for the Philadelphia Eagles this year
Wise guy.
before the trade. I know you were looking at me like, what? What is he talking about? But they
Yeah,
literally did
maybe.
announce the move about what, 25, 30 minutes before the end of the trade deadline at 4 o'clock on Tuesday. But Adam, no big moves. Meanwhile, the Washington Commanders, they did make a
Oh,
potentially significant move that we'll talk about. And right now, the Commanders are in the driver's seat with the Eagles chasing them in the division.
yeah. Look, they made a big move. Whether it works out for them is the question. With Marshall Lattimore's injury history with hamstring, going back to going back to Ohio State. So yeah, look, they were going for it. I'm a little surprised that they didn't make a trade for a receiver, which is equally as a need. In fact, I think some around the league would say it was a bigger need, but getting a corner was a need. We'll explain to you what their thought process was, and there was another corner that they looked into, I was told, which I'll put out here in a couple minutes. But um, yeah, look, the Eagles looked at a couple things. We've talked about this in our what is this, our seventh year doing the show? Something like that.
Yeah.
There have been years that they didn't do anything, and it's not for lack of trying or looking into it. It just that you don't want to give needless picks away for guys who you don't think are upgrades. Like you just don't make a trade to make a trade. That's not smart. So yeah, look, they could they use a better could they use a edge rusher who's an upgrade? Sure. They have enough of them. That's not the issue. They have five. Again, with depth, it's not about how many you have. It's about the quality of the depth, which we kind of used that phrase for now 5 or 6 years, and it's pretty apropos here. They couldn't get that upgrade. So they have who they have. The hope is that some of the guys like Bryce Huff, who apparently has a wrist injury, a wrist issue, plays better down the stretch here. But the bottom line is they have who they have. They're a good football team. The Eagles are 6-2, one of the FC's best. But their main competition in the division and one of their main competitions for the conference just theoretically got better, as you mentioned, with Marshawn Lattimore.
Yeah, we talked in the last podcast. There would be some pass rushers available if the Eagles wanted one. Get to the Lattimore point in a second. But none of them were going to necessarily be, unless you were going to be able to hit the home run and get Max Crosby, who I don't believe was ever really available, right? Or same
Wasn't
thing with Miles Garrett, not available. Then you're really just trying to bring up pass. The Eagles have a decent number of pass rushers who contribute, who are doing an okay job, just not somebody who is just dominating every snap like a Miles Garrett or a Max Crosby would. If they brought in one of those Clownies or something, you're just adding another kind of pass rusher to the mold. I mean, if they were really going to improve their pass rush, I felt that they were going to have to upgrade over what they already had. And as you, I think, put out really well, there's not a lot of those guys who are going to be available. And the two names that everybody talked about were just not really available. So in retrospect, seeing how Howie has struggled to really hit on trades at the deadline over the last God knows how many years it's been, 4, 5, 6 years, going back to his last real good one was Jay Ajayi, right? Which is 7 years ago now.
Yeah, wow.
Sometimes the best moves are the ones that you don't make, and it looks like the Eagles are just going to have to work with what they got.
Yeah, and look, and scheme also matters as edge rushers at the edge rushing position because you look at Bryce Huff, right? He had played in the wide nine. Okay, he played a specific way for the Jets where he excelled. They do it a little bit in nickel here, in nickel and pass situations, right? But their base is not a wide nine, and the guys stand up here. They don't really stand up with the Jets, so this is different for him. And his responsibilities are different, and it hasn't worked so far. Doesn't look good. It looks like 17 a year. That's not going to look good. I don't know how they're going to move him next year if they decide to move on in March, when the next trade deadline is, that area when it opens up. I don't know anyone would want him at this point. You got to at least get good tape together. So we'll see what happens. We'll get to their injuries in a couple minutes. We're going to update some stuff there. Dallas is decimated by injury. Wow, it's crazy what they're dealing with.
Mhm.
But before we get to that, let's finish off Washington. So we mentioned they didn't make a trade for a receiver. They're really not good there, other than Terry McLaurin, who's off to a great start. Scary Terry's been terrific. I mean, Noah Brown, who really should be a four, he's starting now. Zacchaeus is in the rotation. De'Ami Brown is in the rotation on the final year's deal. He could run, we know that, but they're not these. Luke McCaffrey, these guys are fours. Like that's
Mhm.
really what they should be, but they don't have anybody else. So they've got that issue. That's not going to go away. They didn't make a trade for a receiver, so that's not going away. But they did solve getting to their defense, their issue where Sanders Stroll, I know they love him. Like they think he's going to be a stud, but they want him to be their nickel. So that should be what they do going forward. So you've got Ben St. Juste, who's in the final year of his rookie deal, with Lattimore on the outside. Quan Martin, who played nickel last year as a safety now, with Jeremy Chin, another guy the Eagles liked over the years. So they feel very good about their secondary. Bobby Wagner's still playing well. Frankie Louvu is our guy. Love him. I know they're very happy with him. Johnny Newton, by the way, talking to the Commanders recently, they are very happy with him. He came back from the broken foot, but he's doing well in the role that they're asking him to play. He's getting better. Cleveland Farrell, when he's been healthy, he's had a knee problem. He's played well. So their defense is good. They're well ahead of schedule, man. I didn't see this. I don't know about you, but I did not see 7-2. I missed on this team. I didn't see this at all.
Well, I mean, we did say if there was going to be, I remember doing some off-season pods and
It was
saying,
you, not me. You
yeah,
got it.
did I
Not
did. We
me.
did say if the quarterback sort of is like a CJ Stroud type player who's just beyond
Yeah.
his years, then yeah, they had a chance because they were talented in some other areas. And yeah, so that's manifested. I would say if I were Washington and I could only make one move at the deadline, to your point on yes, they do need another wide receiver would help, but they have the third ranked offense right now. They have the 14th ranked defense,
I hear you.
and I think the best point you made is that bringing in Lattimore strengthens them in two areas. It brings in if healthy, a better cornerback than they have, and then allows Sanders still to play nickel, where I think most NFL people told us he would be a very good nickel. They thought he'd be really good there, but maybe struggle on the outside. So I get that move, but I will apply the same kind of objectivity and occasional skepticism that we do when the Eagles make a move. This move only is good for the Washington if Marshawn Lattimore stays healthy, and he has a real issue staying healthy. So there's some high reward here, but there's also some risk in you trade for a guy and you're hoping that this gets your defense improved, but he really does struggle to stay on the field. So if I'm
Yeah,
an
these
Eagles
games.
fan,
Yeah.
I'm like concerned that the team I'm chasing got better, but I'm
Yes.
also in that mode saying, let's see if this guy can play like 5 games in a row for you before I start shaking in my boots.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like when I look at this team before the season started, I was with them in training camp a couple days. They felt they were in sort of a turnaround program, not a rebuild, but a turnaround program where you try to you don't rebuild, but you're kind of retooling and resetting the roster.
Mm-hmm.
Getting Daniels, who I love for this draft, thought he'd be a stud. I didn't know when that would happen, so I felt good about that. And I like Brian Robinson as running back, but I felt the lack of pass rush. I had issues with their secondary. I felt this would be like a 7 or 8 win team, maybe 9 if Daniels obviously is just, he looks like an elite quarterback as a rookie, like you mentioned with CJ Stroud. But with the Texans last year, yeah, Stroud was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I think this year, I don't want to see he's brought down to earth. They're very beat up at receiver. I mean, their 2 starting receivers are out. That matters. But Will Anderson's great. I mean, he's a great player. He was excellent as a rookie. The roster turned out to be way better than probably the Texans thought it would be last year. Now with the Commanders, we got a major hole at receiver opposite McLaurin that's not going away. They're not Ben Sinnott's a non-factor. They don't know what they want to do with him yet. Zach Ertz, by the way, I know they're happy with him in his role.
Mm-hmm.
This offensive line, I don't know how the hell they're doing this with this group. I know Cosme's really good.
Yeah.
Brandon Coleman had a concussion. He's back. Cornelius Lucas is now hurt. Biotish is okay at center. He's one of the better ones, but he's not a great player.
Right.
They got Allegretti and Wiley, who came over from the Chiefs, who are just average. Not great depth in the offensive line. They're doing a good job of coaching. I got to give the guy credit, this Bobby Johnson. But
yeah, it helps when the quarterback plays at that level, when he just knows when he can
protect.
run or when he
Yeah.
just knows what he wants to do with the football immediately. And he's been
Yeah.
good.
And Eckler's done a good job as a third down back.
Yep.
But this team's overachieved, quite frankly. I feel strongly that the Eagles are a better football team. We're going to learn in 2 weeks. On a short week for both teams, by the way. On that Thursday night. Can't wait for that game. Cannot wait for that game.
I'm glad you said that. The Eagles have a ton of talent. We know that. And in deciding not to make any moves at the deadline, we'll finish it off with this. I wonder what kind of discussions they had amongst themselves, because I hope that they are also realistic with themselves about who they are. They have a lot of talent, and they've played some teams that they've beaten the snot out of recently. Not the Jaguars, but before that, the Giants beat the Bengals up pretty good. But when you look at their strength of schedule, it's getting worse by the week. I mean, even that Buccaneers loss looks worse now because the Buccaneers were a winning team. But now, listen, I think the Bucs are a good team. They've had to play the Ravens, the Falcons, and the Chiefs back to back to back. That's really difficult. The Bucs are decent, but most of the Eagles' wins here are coming against teams with 2 wins, right? The Browns, the Giants, the Jaguars,
Yeah.
and somebody else I think that they've beat only had 2 wins. Who am I missing? The Saints, right? They beat the Saints on a last
Of
minute
course, the
play.
Saints were really, but hang on, the Saints were really good when the Eagles played them. We got to say that.
Right,
Like
but
they were
I always say
setting
like
team record.
I always say like, what are you in totality? I
Well,
like
no,
to look at the
right,
end of
but
the
it's
year.
how good were they? The Eagles, the Saints game, that was when no one could stop Clint Kubiak.
Right.
They were setting records. Who didn't play for? I'm drawing a blank here. Who didn't play for the Eagles in that game?
Well, they didn't have
Someone.
AJ Brown in that game,
Yeah,
and they didn't
it's
have somebody else as well
it
who
was
I'm mixing
AJ. It
up.
was AJ Brown. That was it. That was it. The
Okay, I thought
umpire.
there might have been something else.
Yeah, that's pretty significant. I mean, that's
Yeah, of
obviously.
course, of
Yeah.
course, of course.
So that look, it's who you are when you play them. Then okay, you're fine overall. Okay, who did they become? But they weren't that when the Eagles played them. But Tampa, by the way, that was week 1 for Christ's sake. I mean, that was week 1. You don't know who you are. Coaches will tell you. In fact,
Mm-mm.
Greg said this last week with us. Coaches will tell you they don't know who you are. They don't know who they are until well into the season starts because week 1 could fool you. Though, let me ask you this question about week 1. Do you think the Eagles did beat the Packers
That's a really good win.
in Brazil? I thought that was pretty representative for the Eagles. The Eagles are a good football team.
Yeah, yeah, they got a lot of explosive plays in that game. Now they're a better defensive team than they were in that game. They were terrible defensively. In fact, they should have given up 50 points in that game, to be
Well, the
honest
first
with you.
series they gave up point.
Well, they were good in the red zone after the turnover,
Yes,
but like they were
yes,
giving up yards to Josh
they
Jacobs,
were. Yeah,
right, and there were
yeah.
there were just wide open receivers. Jaden Reed was embarrassing how open he was. That you haven't seen that since the first 3 weeks now, where wide open receivers are just running all over. You saw like I know that the Jaguars got a 4th and 12. You've seen it maybe in very small doses, but in general, since the Bucs game. Since they went into the bye week, they've come out and played better defensively. But again, you got to take a hard look, right, at
Yeah.
who you're playing and what your schedule looks like once you get past Dallas. And can you beat these teams? You should be able to.
The only thing I'll say with the Jaguars game, and I believe it's because they played so soft coverage because they were up so big, they kept giving up chunk plays in the fourth quarter
Mm-hmm.
because they had that big lead. And really third quarter, third end, but more fourth, where because the defense was unbelievable the first half. I mean, it was just it was like a total shutdown. It was a steel trap.
Yep.
And when you have a big lead, you're playing dime. That's when Avonte Maddox was in for that one play.
Yep.
So you're going to give up yardage. You're like,
course.
this is the typical Fangio. You back off. Go ahead. You want yards? Go ahead. But you don't
Yeah,
want to give up scores.
I agree. I mean, I don't think that's an excuse to give up 4th and 12, but I definitely get your
I
point
know.
as they were playing softer and yes, the Jaguars were a mess offensively. All right, let's talk about the Eagles' injuries here. Obviously, it's Dallas week, and the Cowboys are up next, and they've got a slew of injuries of their own. But we'll talk about the Eagles' injuries here. Now, Barkley got a little beat up in that game, Adam.
He did. So he got hit. He got crunched. Part of it was the obviously one of the best plays we've ever seen on that play. He looked like he wrenched his back. He might have a thigh issue. We'll see. We have no idea yet how they're going to list him. He's going to play. He'll be starting. They may limit him in practice this week. He was special last week. What else do we have to say? He's a pretty amazing football player. Isn't it amazing what happens when you take a really good football player and you put him with a team that believes in an offensive line? The
Yes.
Giants, and I seem to say this every year, why don't other teams understand what's so simple? When will you finally invest in your offensive line? Draft your own players and develop them like the Eagles have under Jeff Stoutland.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's easy to point a finger at the Giants and say, why didn't you do that? They actually tried. They just did a terrible job of
Missed
bringing
badly.
in. Yeah, they missed on their picks and they missed on their free agent guys.
By the way, Evan Neal, I'm just telling you, I've talked to so many teams about him. Everything that happened with the Giants was not a surprise. I can just tell you.
Right.
Not a surprise.
Correct.
Look at it. Greg Van Roten, right? Who's played at University of Pennsylvania. It's a great story that Greg's still in the league. But he should not be starting.
No.
Look, Jermaine Illuminor is a very valuable backup. You could
Right.
argue that he shouldn't be starting. Yes, Andrew Thomas was a very good draft pick, but that was done by Dave Gettleman. Gettleman made that pick. They signed John Runyon Jr., nice player. Packers really didn't want him back.
Right.
John Michael Schmitz, their own player, he's okay. It's patchwork, man. Look at the
Right.
way the Eagles do it. Is it that hard?
I know, and the one guy they hit on is injured all the time, and that's Andrew Thomas, right? So unfortunately
Hmm.
for them, it just yeah. So Barkley, we'll see. Now AJ Brown is interesting. You know, he got hurt with the knee injury, left the game, and it doesn't look like it's going to be. It's not a severe injury, but that doesn't mean he's definitely playing. We have to
Yeah.
see if he's able to get out on the practice field and do something, and how he's feeling today when practice starts.
Yeah, so he was like, he wanted to go back to the game, but he felt something. So we don't know what it is.
Hmm.
So he's really questionable at this point. They have to get through practice this week. We know Jahan, big time catch Dotson from last week. He would be the one who would start. That was an unbelievable catch. Wow. Because I remember seeing it. I'm like, 83. Wait, is that Greg Lewis? Who is that? Oh, Jahan Dotson.
Greg Lewis, it's funny.
You know me with the numbers, old school
Yeah,
numbers. Was
definitely.
G. Lou, was he 83? I
Yeah, he
think he
was.
was.
He
Not
was.
looking.
He did not. Gilu was sort of a reliable guy who could go over the top a few times, but he did not make catches like that.
I know, I know.
And by the way, Jahan Dotson, take the juggling part away. The way he went up to high point it before the juggle
Yeah.
was the type of catch he made consistently at Penn State, despite his smallish frame. Where that went, I don't know, but it definitely resurfaced for at least one game, and maybe he can build off that.
It's a huge play. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Go ahead with the rest. We
So
got Britton Covey.
yeah, so Covey's got the broken shoulder blade. I know our Andrew DeCecco told us that he didn't have surgery from what he understands.
Right.
The hope is that he's eligible to come back. He's served the 4 games, so it's just a matter of, is he ready to actually play, or at least start practicing? So we'll learn more this week. Then what
I
we'll
think there's
also
a
learn
bigger
is,
question is that is he well, he's on IR, right?
yes, yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah, the
that's
bigger
what I just
question
said.
is there a roster spot? Is he on the 53 once he's
Oh,
healthy?
he'll be on this 53. Yeah,
So who's
he's
coming
they're
off?
not going to cut him. The
Why
question
not?
is,
They got a punt returner now. They got two.
well, yeah, but you got to say this guy was the best punt returner in the National Football League.
I don't think they've missed him. No, if I'm not trying to be rude to Britton Covey, but I don't think
But
they've missed him.
also, do you know how well he was doing the slot before they cut? Before he got hurt, did a
Well,
good job.
I hear you, but now that Anaya Smith is on the 53, they're not cutting him.
Probably not. I don't see it. I just don't see it. Now okay. Since you brought it up, right now they have 5 receivers, right? 4 are healthy.
Yep.
Okay. AJ Brown's not healthy. They have to see what happens late, through practice and see if he can get on the field before the game. By the way, that old rule where you had to practice to play, teams they're not abiding by that anymore. I counted 4 players who didn't practice last week, who played. So I know most teams don't want that. They won't do it, but not all teams are agreeing to that old axiom. You got to practice to play. So you got the blocking receiver, Johnny Wilson. Now, here's another question. If the Eagles cut Johnny Wilson, I'm not saying they're going to, but if they did, do you think anyone would claim him? He's a blocking receiver.
I don't think anybody would claim either him or Britton Covey, to be honest with you. I just
disagree
don't
with
think
Covey.
Britton Covey is going to get.
Disagree.
I don't think people are going to use a waiver claim on a punt returner. I,
Huh?
I just
And a
don't.
slot receiver? Okay.
I mean, the Eagles drafted these two guys. They had Britton Covey. They drafted one guy, Anaya Smith, in the 5th round, and the other guy in the 6th round, and
Yep.
they're actually playing right now. And if you're going to put Covey on the 53, one of those two guys, I think they keep them both and make one of them inactive, and maybe they release Tristan McCullum because Sidney Brown is now part of their safety package and playing well. But
Well,
like,
McCollum plays safe, plays on specials. I
right,
know he's
but so does Sidney Brown. So
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, you're going to make Johnny Wilson or Anaya Smith inactive at a time that you're trying to actually develop him and play him. I don't know.
Johnny Wilson is who he is. He's very stiff as a receiver. He's
Yep.
that we kind of know who he is. And I Smith has got, you mentioned punt return, slot receiver, gadget. Oh, by the way, the other guy is Eli Ricks. Eli Ricks,
Yes.
he doesn't play.
He doesn't play. Right.
Never play.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It'll be interesting to see. I understand your point, and maybe he would get claimed, but I don't think punt returner is such a big thing now in the NFL that I'd be worried about A, losing him, or B, somebody running to the waiver wire to get him.
Well, $10, I'll bet you they don't cut him.
Okay, you might be right.
Yeah.
Well, who would be the other candidates? The other candidates would be Ricks or McCullum. I could see them cutting McCullum first because that's you're really not worried about. But
Now,
you got
we
Sidney Brown back.
remember we should mention on that he's not vested, but every single player who's cut has to go through waivers. Even vested veterans now through the Super Bowl.
Mhm.
After the trade deadline, every player is subject to waivers, even if you're vested. So we'll see what happens. Look, these are the kind of discussions that front offices have.
Right.
Whether because you have to look at what's the likelihood that you could sneak the guy through waivers. As we've also said over the years, if you're gonna cut somebody and they have to go through waivers, you're willing to lose them.
Right.
That's it. You could be wrong. So you could cut a guy and you thought he can get through and he didn't.
Yep. It's
Like
happened.
also Jack Driscoll. Now I know he's a stout guy, probably wouldn't do that. They probably wouldn't do that, and he's got positional value for them to play right or left tackle if needed, guard, or if he had to play center, he probably could. So he is valuable.
There you go. All right, as far as Dallas Goedert, you got to expect him to at least try to get on the practice field this week. I mean,
Yeah.
if he wasn't able to play, it's going to be a shock to the Eagles because they would have put him on IR if they thought he was going
Yeah.
to be out for 4 weeks.
Yeah, I expect him to practice. It's simple. It's a hamstring injury. If they clear him to practice, they know he should have a chance to play because what happens is when you have a hamstring injury, just talking to athletic trainers, if there's blood in the strain, it's got to be out, fluid out, and they're constantly checking on this stuff. So if he's practicing, the chances are he's probably going to play without a setback, obviously, the dreaded setback.
Yep.
And Stoll and Calcaterra have done a good job.
I
Jack
mean, the
is a wide.
Eagles were living in 12 and 22 and 23 personnel against the Jags. I mean, they were happy to throw tight ends on the field and Ben Van Sumeren as a fullback. So
Yeah.
yeah, everybody's done a nice job with Dallas Goedert out, including the
By the way,
coaches scheming it.
what's that?
I said, including the offensive coaches scheming up ways to get
Yeah.
guys involved.
Yeah. Boy, how about this one? Eagles have played more 12 personnel than any NFL team. I mean, come on, really? Yeah, because they don't use the three. Jalen does not like using the third receiver. It is what it is. And credit to Kellen Moore. I told folks this to start the season. A coach that coached with Kellen from the defensive side of the ball with the Cowboys told me he'll never shoehorn anything. He's going to do whatever his quarterback is comfortable with. He
Hmm.
did the same thing with Dak. Whatever Dak wanted, he did. Though they'd have to meet, they'd meet and say, hey, here's what I'd like to do. What do you want? What do you like? What don't you like? Let's take it out. That's coaching.
Yeah.
And Jalen does not like using the third receiver. Now, we could argue whether Jahan Dotson's helped himself. That's another story for another time. We know why Washington didn't want him, but bottom line is Calcaterra's done a good job. I think you called this in August or July, whenever the hell it was. You said there might be a point if they're not happy with their third receiver, Calcaterra could be that guy. And guess what? He is.
He is. He
Pretty much
absolutely
is.
is. And he is building a trust with Jalen Hurts. And obviously, when your number three
Yes.
receiver is usually, depending on how you use him, a guy who's going to work the middle of the field. And we know that that's not where Jalen Hurts looks first or second. He's usually looking at AJ Brown outside or then Devontae Smith middle to outside. So that's also a big part of the third receiver. Now, and then when you have Goddard, who can be pretty much anywhere, and Calcaterra has also done that. Calcaterra has been used not just as a quick short pattern guy. They've gotten him open on crossers deeper in the field. So he's stepped in nicely there. Jordan
One
Mailata.
thing I would add,
Go
though,
ahead.
just hang on.
Mhm.
One thing I'd like to add. It'll be fascinating to see what happens if Brown and Goddard play this week. Because Calcaterra's done a nice job. Is it the same old, same old? It's Brown one, Smith two, Goddard occasionally? Or because Jalen had that big game with the Saints with Goddard. Was there another game that he did well with Goddard this year? I have to look.
Just the
Goddard's
Saints
been slipping
game.
time.
I don't remember any other game where it was because he
Okay.
got. Yeah, I mean he's missed the last three, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just interested to see what because Jalen's got really comfortable with Calcaterra. That's a big development. You hit on it. There's clearly a chemistry with the two. This is their third year of working together. It and how does Kellen Moore feel about it as a play caller? It's his run, it's his call,
Hmm.
but Jalen's got to throw it, and Jalen has developed this chemistry as you just talked about with Calcaterra. I'm just fascinated to see because you got Brown's a top three receiver, right? Devontae Smith is so good. Goddard, when healthy, he gives him that physical presence over the middle of the field. Stoll is the wide tight end, so Dallas doesn't have to stay in a lot.
Hmm.
Calcaterra is that move tight end. They've got so many different variables of the scheme and the offensive scheme. And the other thing is, are they going to still play as heavy 12 personnel? That's another thing, as you mentioned. We we know they're running the most because of the way that things have gone here without using the third receiver. So it's interesting. I'm interested to see what they do going forward.
Yeah, and of course, and we'll talk about this a little bit in a few minutes. I mean, I think the heavy 12 is also indicative of how much they're a running team now, and just getting
Yes.
bigger
Oh yeah.
bodies up front to block for Saquon Barkley. The left tackle, Jordan Mailata. This will be, it should be the fourth and final game
Yep.
of IR for him with the hamstring. So veteran Fred Johnson will be stepping in again, and hopefully by this time next week, we'll be hearing that Jordan Mailata is activated into the 21-day practice window and able to
Hopefully.
get out
Yeah.
on the field. Hopefully, you never know, but
Yeah.
definitely hope so. All right, so those are the Eagles' injuries. We will get to
On offense. No, let's go
on
to
offense. I'm
defense.
sorry, yep, I forgot about the one key one on defense.
Actually, forgot to. I forgot to talk about. You mentioned when they were playing 21 personnel.
Oh, Van
This,
Sumeren, right?
yeah, my bad for not putting that on the list. Yeah, he is. This is fascinating. Not that it's not like they're going to play it like the Niners do. They play that much 21, but he definitely has a role. He's got good hands. The guy's a former. Was he a tight end or a running back
He
in
was
high school?
a tight end, I believe,
Okay,
at
so
Michigan before going to then Michigan State.
but at high school, was he?
Oh, I think he played like a bunch of different positions.
Okay, but he clearly is athletic. So he's got the concussion. We'll see what happens. Now, here's another thing. Is there anyone else could play the Van Suber role on offense?
No, probably no
Yeah,
spare parts that you
probably
could
not.
just convert into a fullback.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah. I just thought I'd bring it up. But defensively, Darius Slay with the groin. So we'll learn more about it if he could practice this week. He's missed 3 practices, so he didn't do anything last week. So other than rehab his injury, so he's one they got to get him on the field to see if he can play or not. Isaiah Rogers, the guy filled in. Mixed results. Look good in the first half. Then they started really, when the Jaguars started moving the football in the air, they picked on Isaiah Rogers, who we thought would be the case because he's smaller comparatively to the Jaguar receivers who are taller. So we'll see what happens this week against Dallas, and we'll learn more this week. But yeah, the Eagles, look, it's not just Dallas. We'll get into Dallas's injuries, which are numerous, and they're going to impact this game. We'll get into that in a couple of minutes. But yeah, that's the Eagles' injury situation as we know it.
All right. How's your injury situation? I see you got the sweatshirt on for stretch zone, Adam, and I will
Yeah.
tell you, I had my first session last week,
Yeah.
and man, does it make a world of a difference. And I know it's been making a difference for you.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's get into this. So you were at Stretch Run for the first time.
Yeah.
Okay. So you had your consultation because they went over your, any issues with, your body, any surgeries or stuff like that.
Yep.
So once you got that done and you had your 30-minute stretch, what did you have done and how did it feel doing it and then after?
Yeah, we focused mainly on the legs and lower back, and it's been great. I haven't really talked about it on the pod. You know this. I'm a runner, but I haven't been running as much over the last 2 to 3 months because I've been dealing with some kind of ailment that has been difficult for me to figure out. But
Okay.
I think I'm 95% through it, and so I've
Good.
been able to start running again. But I noticed that I was I was not I was like stiff running. I was slow. My legs didn't move the way they used to. So I was able at the stretch zone to really get my calves, my thighs worked on, just my whole lower, all my legs and my lower back. And it was great. Lexi, who worked with me, we came up with a plan for what we want to do, and that was just the first session. And I was a little nervous because I'm not a very flexible person. I always joke that I'm about as flexible as a refrigerator or a keg, and I've never been a very flexible person. And to be able to work and use their system, they have a great number system for how they're going to stretch you, and then each time can you go a little extra mile the next time? And you could, and I will push myself. So I really enjoyed it. And I left there like, wow. I feel it's like my legs felt a little bit extra like gusto. And then
Mm-hmm.
I was able to do a run and it really made a difference. In fact, I shaved a few
Oh,
seconds off that last run. So I felt great. I don't know if when you work out, like you always get a soreness, right? Sometimes you like
yep.
that soreness feel like because it's a good soreness, and that's how I felt. I felt refreshed and having that good soreness of having my body extra flexed out and stretched out after the session. So it was a wonderful experience, and I'm going back again today, and I'm going to do it every week. And my goal Lexi's goal for me is to be able to touch my toes, which I've never been able to just bend down and touch the toes. My hamstrings are way been for someone who runs as much as I do. My hamstrings should be loose enough to do that, but I have not been able to do it. But I think I'll get there.
All right, couple things. So, by the way, I'm assuming you live in South Jersey, so that it's Cherry Hill, Mount Laurel, Franklin Lakes, Northfield, and
Hmm.
Princeton. In PA, where I am, mainline Haverford, right on Lancaster Avenue, Devon, which is also it's also near it's about 15 minutes from the Haverford one. That this one's in the Whole Foods, if you know the area. Exton, where I go a lot. I know John Kincaid from 97.5 goes there. South Philly and Montgomery County, Elkins Park, where I'm from, that area, and near the Yorktown Plaza. Upper Dublin, Drescher off 611, Feasterville. So they got 12 locations. Go to stretchzone.com, get your free stretch. It's 30 minutes. You're going to feel better. Geoff just told you how much better he felt so he can run better. I play tennis 4 to 5 days a week. I couldn't do it without going to Stretch Zone. StretchZone.com. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and really, Adam, if you think about it, we as human beings, right? We reflexively stretch. Usually, when we wake up, like we're stiff, and it's a great. I love that morning where I'm like, "Ah," and I go like this, and all of a sudden my chest and my arm. That's how, if imagine that for like a half hour's worth of how good your body feels the way you do it in the morning or at night right before you go to sleep, and you're loosened up. It's a great feeling. I'm
Real
really
quick,
happy.
I just thought about that. I forgot to tell you this, so we'll move on in like 20 seconds. So 2 nights ago, I was playing tennis at 7 a.m. So I'd made a decision. I rarely do this. I get stretched late at night. It was like 7:30. So I had them stretch me just to see how it would feel. I felt so good when I woke up, but I wasn't sore at all because I got stretched. I I played so well. I was so loose. I was like, this is unbelievable. Because you never know with that. This is my third year using stretch zone.
Hmm.
I take it to the limit. You mentioned that the numbers are 3, 5, and 7, 3 light, 5 moderate, 7 the strong stretch.
Hmm.
By the way, did you do any sevens or do you just do threes?
No, I went seven every time.
Did
We
you?
started off the
You
three.
pushed one?
Yeah,
Oh
three is the
man.
starter, right? And then you try to get to
Yeah.
five. Then you try. I
Wow.
like to push myself, so I
Okay.
had no problem doing it.
Good
Yeah,
for you, man.
yeah,
Good for you. But anyway, so to finish this off, it everybody has their ways to do it. I know some friend like I do it usually. I go right before I play. If I'm playing at noon, I get stretched from 11 to 11:30, drive to the tennis course and play. Golfers who I know a lot of friends who were golfers who go to stretch zone. If they have a tee off time at 9, they get stretched at 7. They want a couple hours. I just know for my system, I like getting stretched right before I play if I can do that. But
definitely.
everyone's
Go ahead. Yeah, I was gonna say we appreciate Stretch Zone being a partner of
yes.
Inside the Birds.
Thank you.
All right, someone who got maybe a little too stretched in the game that he just played is Dak Prescott, the Cowboys quarterback. His
Oh,
hamstring got stressed out a little more than you'd like, so he's now going to be on injured reserve. And once again, Adam, I mean, we have 1 year, I think, one cool year of Eagles Cowboys where Jalen Hurts faces Dak Prescott after I don't know how many years in a row of neither guy like facing off against each other. Looks like we're going back to the old days. So it'll be Jalen Hurts versus Cooper Rush for the Cowboys, who will be starting for the Cowboys for at least the next 4 weeks.
yeah, it's interesting with with Cooper Rush. He faced the Eagles once. It's in terms of a starter, and it was not good. It was just over 2 years ago, October 16th, 2022. 18 of 38, 181, and I remember this game. He had a touchdown and 3 picks. Gardner Johnson had 2 picks. This is one where he seemed like he was Ed Reed. He was just seeing it. Not quite the way it's taught. He just has. That's when he had that knack for just tracking the football.
Mm-hmm.
And Slay also had to pick that game. The Eagles dominated him for the most part that game. CeeDee Lamb, by the way, he's got that sprained shoulder. With sprained shoulders, it's about flexibility, the ability to get your arm up, and strength. So they're not going to know until late in this week. So they'll see what happens. Brandon Cooks still is on IR. He's eligible to start practicing. We'll see if he does. Now, right now, Jalen Tolbert is finally starting to come into his own a little bit. He had been a disappointment for the season. He has been starting for Brandon Cooks. And if Lamb can't play, Kavonte Turpin, who's a returner, who's pretty explosive, he's had a little bit of a run as a receiver. And they made a trade for Jonathan Mingo, who I know the Panthers are trying to move. They were kind of done with him. He just never developed as a former second-round pick.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan Flournoy is a rookie. He's a sixth-round pick. So Jalen Brooks, a guy I liked, who I saw when I was at their training camp last year out of South Carolina, but he's a possession receiver. So they're really struggling, man. They're in a bad way, man. And we just mentioned these receiver injuries. Tyler
Yep.
Guyton, they think will play. Go ahead. The
Yeah,
left
I was
tackle.
gonna say Guyton with the neck, right?
Yeah, so Guyton, they think will play. Now, defensively, Micah Parsons with the left high ankle sprain. He's missed the last 4 games. He's going to practice this week. If he gets through practice, he'll play. They got to see if he could be explosive. Tech Lawrence is out for most of the season. He's got a right midfoot sprain. It's not the dreaded Liz Frank. It's not the one that's 9 months, but it's not good. Marshawn Nealon, who was their third end, he's out for the season, major knee surgery. It's unbelievable the bad luck. If you want to know how bad they are, this is part of it. Dron Bland, he they had to activate him last week where the 21 day window would have expired, but he didn't even practice. So they don't know when exactly he's going to play. He's come back from the broken foot. Give Trayvon Diggs. Diggs is one of the 4 players that I know of last week who practiced without playing. He had the calf injury, but he did play. So he should be good to go this week. But it's really their edge rush group, and this has been a major problem. They also don't tackle very well. I know their coaching staff put a big deal about how they're going to tackle better this season. I don't know how good they're tackling. Their defense has been a major disappointment under Mike Zimmer. Let's call it what
Yeah,
it
I
is.
gotta take a big mea culpa on this one because I remember saying I felt that Mike Zimmer could be the guy that sort of brought this Cowboys defense, which had been so good under Dan Quinn, but bad in big games because of so much man coverage and giving up big plays. I thought Mike Zimmer was going to bring some stability to this defense. And I mean, listen, they've been besieged by injuries, but even before that, they were not playing well. And he couldn't get Mozzie Smith to be a player who we all thought was going to be a very good player. So mea culpa. I saw that one wrong. That and Saquon, I did not think was going to be this good for
Oh,
the
I
Eagles.
agree.
I just did not. And plus, he stayed healthy with the workload
Well,
that he's gotten. So,
but you know
mea
what?
culpa.
The thing with Saquon is he's never run like this before. Fit the hole really well, get skinny through the hole. He's never really done
The
that
power of his
consistently.
runs that we've seen in short yards have been
Velocity.
probably the most impressive. I know obviously, the most impressive thing is the athleticism and the
Mhm.
huge big plays and catching the ball. We've seen that. We have the power that he's been able to run with at times has been really impressive.
Squeezing the hole is the term. He's been
Yep.
phenomenal at that. Hurts was checking the ball down a little to him last week, which is good to see. But yeah, he's a special football player, and obviously he's got a great offensive line in front of him. But you know what? Not every running back would be great with this offensive line. It doesn't work like that. You just don't plug a guy in. Oh, he's going to be great. I mean, it doesn't work like that. And Saquon's obviously always been really talented, and he's playing better than he's ever played. Anyone who's seen his tape has told us that. I mean, it's pretty amazing what he's doing, and we'll see what happens this week.
We will. All right. In a second, we'll talk a little bit about the Eagles and their changing identity that they've been talking about. All right, Adam, you know that the NBA has started, but guess what is now underway? A great, great sport that I love, college basketball. Already two teams in the top 25 have been upset. So college basketball is off to a great start. And you know me, being for the time I spent in Connecticut, I'm a big UConn fan, and I'm looking for my guys to try to be the first team to three-peat since John Wooden's UCLA Bruins won 6 in a row. That would be a heck of an accomplishment if the Huskies can three-peat. And whatever college basketball team you like or NBA team you like, should go see them live and in person. And when you do that, use the Game Time app because there is nothing better than watching basketball live, right? You get the sound of the squeaky baskets on the court, the swish of a net, the roar of a crowd. All of it is so fun to be at, whether it's an NBA game or a college game. And if you want to use Game Time, you've got to take advantage of Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. It filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. That's right. We call it the super deal, and it's available on the Game Time app, and it gives you the best value for the section that you're looking for. And there are other great tiers of deals that you can scroll through as well. It's a very easy experience, and you have to remember your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. They have event cancellation protection, they have job loss protection, and of course, they've got the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time credits you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code BIRDS, BIRDS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code BIRDS, BIRDS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, Adam. You've heard Lane Johnson talk about it. You've heard Nick Sirianni talk about it, and it is not just words. You know, the Eagles. I like how Lane has really shaped this. By the way, Lane Johnson, the subject of the next Gun on One with Derek
Oh,
Gunn.
really?
So that'll be
Awesome.
out today, and he was fat. He was awesome. Lane Johnson's always awesome, but he's really
He's the
awesome.
best.
But he
Best.
pointed to the Detroit game, not from 2 years ago when they, or yeah, 2 years ago when they went to the Super Bowl and beat Detroit in the opener, but the 2021 team, right? Which was the first year for Nick Sirianni and first year of Jalen Hurts as the starter, full-time starter. And we all remember that was a rough first 6, 7 games, identity, you know, finding out who they are. Then they went out. Now, they always talk about the Detroit game as the game where everything changed and they became a running team with
Yep.
Miles Sanders and their offensive line and Jalen Hurts is running. It was actually the week before. I always point this out. It was against the Raiders who were still in
And they
Oakland,
lost.
but they
Yeah.
lost that game.
Yeah.
But they were running the ball a lot and really well. The game got out of hand. It's amazing, Oakland, what they are now. But Oakland won that game, I think like 33-22. But that's where they started to sow the seeds. And then the next week, they came out and just steamrolled the Lions. I think it was like 44-6 or something like
You
that.
got it. Yeah. It was
Um,
actually in Vegas, but yes.
were the Raiders in Vegas?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
first year. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, my bad. But either way, yeah, they went and steamrolled the Lions. That game sticks out to me
It was
like a lot because that's where
crazy.
we saw the Eagles become a running team. And this team now, they're getting big plays in the passing game. So you might think they look like the Super Bowl team from 2 years ago, but really offensively, the data suggests that they're moving the ball like the 2021 team.
So that game in 20, I didn't know you were going to go here, but I'm going to bring it up because I just remember being blown away about the volume of carries.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Jordan Howard was on that team. That's how long ago it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Even Jalen Reagor had carries. So they ran the ball 46 times.
Yep.
That's incredible. But they got off the offensive line got off the ball, and that game they ran for 236 yards. But yeah, these numbers are crazy. So I looked into this a couple weeks ago, and then I checked my friends at Fantasy Points Data just to see if I was right, and I was right, but it wasn't quite what I thought. It's actually unbelievable. Like I never thought I'd see this covering this football team, but no one has run the ball more than the Eagles. No one the Eagles are the only NFL team to run the ball more than they're throwing it. Through 8 games, 265 rushes, 259 passes.
The only
50,
team in the NFL? The only team.
yeah, well, here's why. Because
Even the
the other
Ravens?
team,
Because it feels like the
no, the
Ravens are
line.
just running on everybody.
Well, okay, you have that. Okay, I'm going to bring this up. I'm going to call it up.
I love it.
The Ravens have actually thrown a 52%, 52.8 and 47.2 rush percentage.
So very close, but yeah, not really,
Yeah.
but not at
Yeah.
50% the way the Eagles are.
Nope.
Almost
Nope.
51%.
Yep. It's the Eagles are at 50.6%, 49.4 pass.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the way that clubs look at it analytically. What are your first half play calls? That tells you what they are. Now, when you have Saquon Barkley, you can't hide him. You need to run you're going to have to be balanced no matter what you want. No matter what you want to be from a football operation standpoint. We've talked about this now for 7 years. We know the Eagles would rather be a pass team, but when you bring in Barkley at $12.5 million a year, you're not doing that anymore. You have to account for the running back, especially if he's elite, and he's elite. So back during the Super Bowl run of 17 and before that, the Eagles are usually passing the first half 64 to 67% of the time. Not anymore. This year, in the first half, like every NFL team is well above 50%, but the Eagles are only 56% pass, 44% run. In 22, in the first half of games, speaking of 64%, 64.2, 35.8 run. So they were more of a passing team in the first half. They were more of a passing team to a degree, depending on how you they still, because they got up so big, it made them look like they were more of a running team when they weren't. They just got big leads and they ran it, so that the number would be skewed at the end. Always look at first half pass run ratio. That'll tell you what the team is.
Yep.
So, but overall, it's so obvious the Eagles are a balanced team. You can't argue against it. It's a fact. The numbers show it. The tape shows it. They got this great offensive line. Hey, and no, I don't think Jeffrey Lurie's upset about this. He signed the check to pay Saquon $12.5 million a year. He knew this was coming. Come on now. Come on, people.
Yes. Now he's not upset about it right now. Let's see. Let's see. Well, let's see if it changes as they play better teams, and let's see how
All
they
right.
fare. Because
That's true. Because if you look there,
okay.
Okay, let's look at their schedule. Okay, now Dallas, the Eagles are a huge favorite because of the quarterback change for Dallas. They're 7.5 point favorite, right?
Yep.
Okay, so the Eagles schedule. Then they host the Commandos on that Thursday night game, the 14th in Week 11, right?
Yeah, short turnaround. What a tough week. I know Dallas is not very good, but to have to play Dallas and Washington in a 4-day span is pretty rough.
Emotional division, yeah, And then they play at the Rams. They know this team very well. That's a Sunday night game in Week 12. That if Nakua and Cooper Kupp are healthy, on Demarcus Robinson is ridiculous. 4 touchdowns the last 2 games. Good for fantasy, by the way.
They're validating me because I said I thought the Rams going into the year would win the NFC. I predicted them to win the NFC West. Now I couldn't have predicted
you did. I thought you were out of your mind.
300 injuries even before the first game, but they're good.
Yeah, they're hanging in. They were 1-4. Yeah, they've turned around. But I can't believe Arizona. You got to be kidding me.
Crazy.
Arizona, bad roster. But anyway, then by the way, how about this one? They have to play at LA. Then the next week, the Eagles have to play at Baltimore. So it's on your point. Then we're going to see how. Now, obviously, if it changes if you're behind, you throw the ball more. That's just the way it is.
Right.
But I'll be interested to see. On your point, is it's not that establishing the run is really it's a fallacy.
Right.
It's just, do they come out okay? Will 6 out of the first 9 plays be a run? Like how are you going to do that? Well, if you're playing bad teams. But the comical thing is, look how bad their first quarter scoring is, but they're still running the ball a ton. It's usually not like that when you don't score in the first.
Right.
Which is odd.
This is a huge 3-week stretch, by the way, for the NFC East, because while the Eagles are playing Dallas they're playing it on before that game starts, the Washington Commanders are going to have played the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that game will be over most likely by the time, unless it goes into overtime, right? By the time the Eagles play the Cowboys. And if the Commanders lose to the Steelers and the Eagles beat the Cowboys, which they should do, now your 2-game deficit is 1 game, and then the next 4 and 5 days later, you're going to play each other. So by the Sunday of the next week, the NFC East could look a lot different, right? And to me, for the Eagles, it really comes down to those 2 Washington games and really what Washington does against the Steelers. If Washington beats the Steelers, it's going to be a tough game for them, especially since they've won all these games in a row. Oh. If Washington beats the Steelers, that is huge for them.
Well,
just to keep that lead that they've got.
Yep. They have the half game lead because they've played 1 more game than the Eagles. They don't have their bye wash until week 14. But you mentioned the Steelers. They think Zach Frazier will be back soon. The rookie center, which was great before he got hurt.
He was.
Cordell Patterson was doing really well before his injury. Nick Herbig, Nate's brother, who's their 3rd edge rusher, who he was, but they traded for Preston Smith. So they're going to get a bunch, and Roman Wilson's hurt, but of course they made the trade for Big Mike Williams. So all of a sudden, now you got to get all these players back, see how they're doing. But another game I cannot wait for is this Steelers Washington game. The game that I thought before the season, I'm like, who cares? But it's a 1:00 game day. It was not flexed. How about that? Not flexed.
All right, one last point on the Eagles we'll get to in a second. Before that, let's hear a word from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you hop into Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. If not, go to their website. It's SkyMotorCars.com. The customer service is great. The inventory is great. They have anything that you're looking for. They're so helpful. Go visit them. Tell them we sent you. You will get a great car buying experience. Trust us on this. All right. So the Eagles schedule, the Eagles still have that game against the Panthers left as well, Adam. So they've got another kind of gimme. I mean, you never want to call anything a gimme in there, but they will still have to play the Steelers. And, that second game again, December 22nd, all right, at Washington, that is shaping up to be an incredible game. Like, it's been a long time, right, since it's been Eagles and Washington
Meaning
for the
something.
division, right?
Yeah.
It's been forever.
I gotta look that up. That's a good point. I gotta look that up. I really wonder. Washington is so bad for so long, and now that you've got Josh Harris, his ownership, and Dan Campbell, who's kind of transformed the culture. Talking to people there, he. I think sometimes the power of positivity. If you have someone who you believe in, maybe when your roster isn't that good, you could play better than you probably are. But look. When you look at Washington, right? The game was Baltimore really handled in that game. The Washington scored late and made the game closer than it really was.
Yeah.
They gave up 30 points in that game. Now I give Washington credit though. Again, the quarterback is Daniels with the run and the pass. He's terrific. He gets there. It's crazy. He gets there at like 5:30 in the morning. I heard.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys like Jalen. Like he's all ball, man.
Yep.
It's all ball. This is a good, I like that. Not that I'm rooting for Dallas to be any good. Okay, being born and raised here, but it would be nice, kind of like some of these other divisions, like the AFC North. It would be nice if the division with all four teams would be good. That where nobody has any idea who's going to win it. Be
sure.
Nice one year.
That would be excellent.
Yeah.
All right, and again, just to underscore why this Washington game on Sunday against the Steelers is so big, assuming again the Eagles take care of business against the Cowboys, but if they win that game against the Steelers and maintain their half-game lead, then even if they lose to the Eagles Thursday night and lose that lead, their next 4 games after that are Cowboys, Titans, by Saints before they have to play the Eagles again. So that is a very, very favorable schedule for them.
It is.
Whereas we just said the Eagles are going to have to play the Rams in LA. They're going to have to play the Ravens the week after. Of course, they'll get their gimme against the Panthers, but then they got to get the Steelers. So it's much harder schedule in that 3-week span after they play the Washington on Thursday night for the Eagles than it is Washington. So again, that makes that game
it's a very good
right
point.
before Christmas an awesome lead up.
Can't argue against it. It's a fact.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the teams that they're playing, but I'm just glad that week 11 game means something. I'm really looking forward to that one.
Definitely. All right, that is going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the Birds. Be sure to check out our friends at phlsportsnation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at phlsportsnation.com and on Twitter at phlsportsnation.